Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 5th through 11th, aka the 9th round of the Queer Lit Readathon. This week I read 8 books, I watched 3 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 3 books. Honestly, this week felt so nice just for knowing that I could actually read as much as I have previously, because for the past few months I read 2 to 3 books a week, which is fine. But I've done basically 0 readathons this year, so it's just good to know that I still can. If you've never heard of the Queer Lit Readathon, it's a readathon I host with my friend Rogan, and then we have a guest host every round. We host this biannually, and this was our 9th round, which means we're in our 5th year of doing it. So the next one is in December, because we always do them in June and December, and then we have queer weekends in March and September. And of course I blacked out our bingo board because that's what I do every round, but you can use the bingo board however you like. First this week I read the Cybernetic Tea Shop. This is a very short novella about this woman who kind of likes to drift. She doesn't spend more than about a year in any given city. She likes to move around. This is also set in the future, so she also works primarily repairing very small robots that are basically like pets. There was a time where you could have like sentient robots, but that time has passed. However, there is at least one that still exists and will continue to exist as long as her parts don't give out on her. She lives in the next city that our protagonist goes to, and she actually runs a tea shop. This definitely had the cozy queer vibes. I really enjoyed how these characters interacted. There were obviously problems going on in this because every story has some problems, but overall this was really heartwarming. Next, as one of our group reads, I reread Nimona, but this time I actually read the graphic novel instead of listening to the full cast audiobook. Now the full cast audiobook is amazing. They did a very good job on it. However, this is a graphic novel about a shapeshifter, so it makes sense you would want to know what they're actually shifting into, and in the audiobook I'm pretty sure they actually describe how she shifts, but it's a little bit more fun to see it on the page. As you might guess, this graphic novel is about a character named Nimona. She wants to be the sidekick to a supervillain, and he has this storied past with the local hero, and that is a whole big thing you're just going to have to check out yourself, because this is just such a fun graphic novel. Has ND Stevenson written other ones? Because I would really like to read them. Then, to cram as many items into the first day of the Queer Lit Readathon as possible, I also read my poetry item for the week, which was Disintegrate, Dissociate. Now this is a very short poetry collection. If you have been on my channel for a while, you know that poetry isn't something that really resonates with me. While I was reading this, I enjoyed it, but there's not much that really stuck in my brain over the week, and that's possibly because I read 11 books this week and it kind of just pushed details out of my brain. Poetry is one of those things where I can say I actively enjoy it while I'm reading it, but then I don't really carry a lot of it with me after. But this poetry collection is by an Indigenous trans woman, and while I was reading it I very much enjoyed it, but there's not much that really stuck with me. Usually the poetry that sticks with me is poetry that I see performed, and then also there's usually some internal rhyme or a really witty turn of phrase. And not all poetry is like that, and not all poetry has to be like that. That's just my personal preference. Next I dipped into 90s kids. This was a lot of fun. This is going to get a little bit confusing because this is a time travel book, but first we have Bex, who is from 2006, and then we have Nicole, who is from 2016. On the independent days in their independent timelines when they go to get their license because they have just turned 16, each of them manages to wind up back in 1989. While Nicole is kind of a rule follower and would love to be able to figure out how to go back to her original timeline, Bex wants to spend as much time in the 80s as she possibly can. She feels like she should have been born in the 80s. In fact, she has a brother who's only 11 months older, and he was born in the 80s, and he brings this up all the time around her because he knows it annoys the crap out of her. Bex decides to run off and just live in the 80s, and because Nicole is roped into trying to find her, they end up together and then living in the 80s, trying to avoid the people that are trying to get them back, but then Nicole's also trying to work on trying to figure out how to get them back. I thought this was wonderful. The discussions of sexuality were wonderful in this as well. I've read one other book by this author before, and I'm gonna have to keep reading her writing because it's fun. Next I read A Dowry of Blood. I actually cheekily picked this for messy queers because I was taking it quite literally. This one is a reimagining of Dracula, except for our point of view character is one of his brides, and she doesn't say his name anytime throughout the book for reasons you will come to find out. This is also written in the second person because it's written as though she is talking directly to him. This also takes place over hundreds upon hundreds of years because of course they're vampires, so they have that kind of time. In the beginning, he finds her dying on a battlefield and he makes her into a vampire, and then she becomes a vampire that likes to kill with vengeance. She likes to find the people in the various towns and cities they live in who are the evil people and kind of use them as her meals. A few centuries later, all of a sudden he's invited this other woman to join them, and then a few centuries later, this other man to join them. So this is a big bisexual polycule. However, this also talks about power imbalances and whether it's really consenting when you've basically been talked into it. I flew through this one simply because I wanted to know what happened and I wanted to know how the end result was going to happen, because they tell you right from the very beginning that our point of view character kills him. I wanted to know why and I wanted to know how, and we got that. After that, I read The Art of Drag. This is a beautiful primer on the subject that has exquisite illustrations. It's just so gorgeous inside this book. It is quite a large book with very large spreads, so you get these very beautiful images, but you also get a lot of interesting text, and then from there you've got jumping off points to different movies and other books that you might want to enjoy on the subject. One of the many interesting facts that I learned about this book is Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side is actually written about drag queens. I didn't really know the lyrics of that song before, besides the chorus and kind of that guitar riff. Now I know it's about actual drag queens. After that, I very happily, mostly in my bathtub, read Home Field Advantage. This is a book I obviously picked up for queer sports, but it's also a romance between a cheerleader and the captain of the football team, except for that captain ends up being a girl. The summer previous, the guy that was going to be the head quarterback tragically died in a car crash, and that's something a lot of people in the school are still grieving because he was a very popular guy. However, as we come to find out, he wasn't exactly the best person in the world to everyone. The football team also pretty much unanimously decides that they don't want to be run by a girl. They don't want a girl quarterback, even though this quarterback is amazing. She's in fantastic shape. She knows the game inside and out way better than anyone on the team, and she basically carries them to victory in their first game, even though most of them are crap themselves. And they still say that they wouldn't be there without that previous quarterback. They don't give her any accolades whatsoever. As I'm pretty sure I mentioned, our point of view characters are the cheerleader and the quarterback. I honestly can't remember their names exactly in this moment because so many names this week. But the cheerleader is in the 11th grade and she is trying to make cheer captain the next year, so she's trying not to make too many waves, but she is also trying to lead. And part of this is she doesn't want to make it widely known that she's bisexual because she knows that there's no way she's going to make cheer captain if she does that. A very good ruse she has going is she is fake dating somebody on the football team because he is also queer, he is gay, and he has a boyfriend. They are in fact best friends, but they are fake dating, so nobody kind of sees through them. However, she would really like to be dating this new quarterback and actually ends up trying to help her win over the team so that everyone can have a good season and everyone can move forward. This was just such a wonderful book. I loved all of the side characters. I loved what we got to know about them. I loved this creeping, does she like me, does she like me kind of feeling of it, the romance of it. All of the situations felt really believable, and the reasons why people did things also felt really believable. This one was on my TBR because I had an ARC for it, and the day before the book came out, which was on Tuesday, I actually received a hard copy from Wednesday Books. So again, thank you to Wednesday Books for sending that to me. The last physical book I read this week was The Fever King. This is the first in a duology, although I believe there's also a 2.5 after that, which I believe is a novella. I haven't looked into what that is yet because I didn't want to potentially be spoiled for anything. This is one that my friend R champions all the time, so I was happy to finally have a reason to get to it. And this takes place about 100 years in the future, and some things have gone down in America. Essentially, there's this virus that's gone around and it's killed off a bunch of the population, and whoever doesn't die from the virus gets magic powers. These people are called witchings, and there are many different nation-states that don't like witchings and want them to die because obviously they could have nefarious powers or whatever. And the United States, as you know, it is not the United States anymore. It's like Texas, and then Alabama, and Carolina, and we're set in Carolina. This is a state that actually enjoys witchings. There's a guy there now who actually was a king for a while. He's actually about 120 years old because he is a witching and he has the powers to do that. But he's not in power right now. He's the Minister of Defense, and there's some other guy that's in power, but he's not doing a great job, especially when it comes to refugees, which is a really big part of this because our main character's father is an undocumented immigrant, and they've had to hide his father basically the whole time because it's widely known that if he gets sent back to Alabama, that's basically a death sentence. Our main character had a girlfriend at one point who was deported, and she was dead within a week. After the death of his mother, our protagonist actually dropped out of school to help his father, who has been basically in a catatonic state ever since. And they, along with a bunch of other people, actually live in an old bookstore because there is no other space for people to live. Even though he has papers because he was born there, his father doesn't, so his father can't get a regular job, can't get health insurance, and living conditions for refugees are just absolutely terrible. However, at the beginning of the book, the virus hits this part of the city, and the only person to wake up afterwards is our main character, who now has to go on to work for the government that he has been so opposed to because they've been absolutely terrible when it comes to people who are refugees. I let myself read this one over a few more days than obviously the rest of the books in this list, and mostly that's because there's a lot of political threads to follow, and my brain does that a little bit more slowly than with other things, so it takes me a little bit longer to really absorb that information, but once I got going, I very much enjoyed this. I saw some things coming, but also I don't know how it's going to end, so I'm looking forward to picking up my hold for the second book in this duology. On to what I watched this week. My roommate let us know that there is actually a spin-off to What We Do in the Shadows. It's called Wellington Paranormal, and it follows the police force in the city and all of the paranormal things that happen. We only watched the first couple of episodes, but it is very fun and very silly humor, and I'm enjoying it so far. As soon as she mentioned there was a spin-off, Chad and I basically looked at each other and said, werewolves, not swearwolves, because we were hoping that it had something to do with that, and I'm assuming that's going to come in at some point. I also finally sat down and watched the entire first season of Heartstopper, which was just so good. Like, you don't need me to tell you that, everybody knows that already, but it was so good. The casting for all of the characters was fantastic. They look basically how I remember them looking in the comic book, which is just so good. And then of course this series is just so full of pining and sparks between people, and I really enjoyed seeing that portrayed on the screen. I also really enjoyed that Stephen Fry was a disembodied voice. That was very lovely to me. And I really enjoyed the cameo we got in the last episode because that just made my heart so happy. If you've somehow never heard of the comic series or the Netflix adaptation, Heartstopper is about Charlie Spring. He is gay, he is out in his boys' school, and he meets his new friend on the first day of term, and that is Nick. Nick, for all we know, is a straight rugby lad, but as the series goes on, he seems to realize that he probably isn't. In addition to that, we have a whole host of wonderful side characters and their friends and some of their parents, and they're just lovely. And I'm so excited for whenever the next season comes out because I need it. I, of course, also stayed current on RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars, All Winners. This episode, they were giving speeches at Drag U, basically commencement speeches. And I'm really enjoying this season for the fact that there is no loser edit. It's just so much fun to see people so positive about the things that people are doing and see the different chances and risks that people are taking on having different characters. I also enjoy that we finally got a new little bit of a twist when it comes to Legendary Legend stars, in that the top 2 from this week are actually going to give away 2 stars at the beginning of next week to 2 queens. So is the one remaining queen without a star going to get one? Who is going to get them? Do they know ahead of time who the other person is giving a star to? Like, I want to know how that's going to work out. As for the movies we watched this week, we watched The Man Who Knew Too Little, which is a take on old spy movies. Basically, Bill Murray goes to the UK because that's where his brother lives, and he's there to celebrate his birthday. And while he's there, his brother actually has a really important business meeting, so he's basically like, here's this theater thing, it's this new avant-garde, like, you're part of the experience thing, I'm gonna pay for you to do that so I can have this business meeting tonight, and then we'll celebrate your birthday when you get back. And he's like, okay, cool, whatever. He goes to this theater thing. But the start of the theater thing is standing outside one of those traditional red phone booths that London has. They are there a little bit early, and they end up getting a phone message that's meant for a spy. So he ends up going to this location the spy is meant to go to, but he's there and he knows he basically has to improv his way through this situation, except for he's not in the theater situation. The spy ends up going to where the theater is, and that is disastrous. It's one of those slapstick things where everything makes sense because you're in on the joke, but the main character has no idea and somehow just makes his way through all of this stuff. And it was fun, but it was also ridiculous, and and it messed with my brain a little bit by the end of it. By the end of it, I thought I was living in an Abbott and Costello sketch, and I wanted out of that reality. The other movie we watched was Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. Now this is just fun because all four of the leads are people you know from other things. Also, Stephen Root is the father of the two brothers in this, and he's just in everything. Essentially, Mike and Dave, they are brothers. They go to all these family events, and it's really, really fun until something happens that they have made happen. Some disastrous thing basically ruins every family event, and their families decided this is because they always come stag to these events, then they hit on girls, and then something disastrous happens. So they want them to each bring a wedding date and just hang out with that wedding date and not mess anything up. Well, they decide the best way to find wedding dates is to put it on Craigslist, and this goes viral. And then these two girls, played by Anna Kendrick and Aubrey Plaza, see this advertisement. It's basically like, these guys need wedding dates, and it's a destination wedding in Hawaii. So basically they're in it for this vacation to Hawaii because one of them actually was recently left at the altar, and that's something she is literally carrying around with her all the time. Like, she has the video on her phone and watches it all the time. So they need a vacation. They decide they are going to pretend to be nice girls, incidentally run into these boys, and then see if they can become the wedding dates, but they aren't really nice girls. They have very nice hearts, but they are equally as screwed up as the boys. It's a lot of fun, and it's ridiculous, and the cast is great. So if you haven't seen it yet and you want to go back to 2016 and just laugh at things, this is a good movie to do that. On to my first audiobook for the week, and that is called Tinderbox. This has a very long subtitle, which I did not write down, but if I could paraphrase it, this book is about the fire at the upstairs lounge in 1973 and the rise of gay liberation after that. This one we picked as our other group read because all of the hosts really wanted to read it. However, we understood that not everyone is going to want to read about such a tragedy. Up until 2016 and the Pulse nightclub tragedy, this was the time when the most queer people were killed en masse in the States in a targeted event. Although upon reading this, that's not exactly how I would phrase it. Based on what I'd heard about it, I assumed it was somebody from outside the community that had come in and burned down this nightclub, and that's not the case. It was somebody who was actually there that day, got mad for getting kicked out, and things escalated. As true crime, it felt like this was very well researched and very well written, and the audiobook was a valuable way to get through it because I probably would have thrown the book a few times. A lot of things happened around this time and then after this time that will make you very angry if you decide to delve more into this case, so just know that going in. My second audiobook of the week was Lakelore by Anna Marie McLemore. This has two protagonists as well. Both of them are non-binary, and one of them has just moved to the same city as the other one. However, they had actually been there a few years before on a field trip, and one of them actually magically saved the other from the pursuit of bullies. A very easy way to tell that this is a week where I'm wrapping up a readathon is my camera battery died. Bastien, who's always lived in this town, knows about this world under the lake that nobody believes them about until Lore comes along, because Lore can see it as well. However, something weird is going on with the lake because usually they can just see the world under the lake when they are there, but the lake seems to be encroaching into the town itself, and they have to figure out why and how to stop it. That is the most basic synopsis I could give for this because there are a lot of moving parts in this and a lot of feelings, and my feelings are mostly glowing and warm and wanting to protect these characters because they are just such lovely kids. Additionally, if audiobooks are something that are accessible to you, I definitely recommend this one because the two narrators are Abby Roca, who you might know from Cemetery Boys, and Vico Ortiz, who you might know from Our Flag Means Death. Additionally, because I've been following this author online for years, I saw some things reflected in these characters' experiences that I've seen this author talk about when it comes to their own experience, and it was just lovely to see that on the page. The final audiobook I listened to this week was not a book that was on my TBR at all. However, I had some extra time, so I figured why not add another book and also do a lot of cross-stitching while I listened to it. If you're interested in all of that, that is heavily documented in the vlog that will be coming out in the next couple of days. I put it together, but it doesn't have captions yet. And because this video always comes out on a Sunday, I'm going to focus on putting this one up today and that one probably up on Tuesday. Anyway, the audiobook that I got to listen to, I was so excited for because I didn't know The Hold was going to come in this week, and it it was just a really good week for it. This one is called Spin Me Right Round, and this is also a Back to the Future inspired queer book. However, this one is way more directly inspired to Back to the Future because our protagonist actually ends up going to high school with his parents. As this book starts out, our main character Louise is about to go into this meeting with his principal where he is going to try to abolish the rule on the prom tickets that says that every person has to bring somebody of the opposite gender as their date. This is a little bit self-serving because obviously he wants to bring his boyfriend, but in addition his best friend is non-binary, so what exactly is the opposite gender for that? When he and his friends ever try to push forward any type of gay liberation or just equality for people who are LGBTQ, the people in the town, especially his mom, look back to when they were in high school and how they had a classmate who actually died tragically, and everybody thinks it was because he was closeted. Essentially, they are scared of having these students make targets of themselves. He obviously thinks this is garbage and he's really mad about it, and he's running to talk to his favorite teacher about it when he gets hit in the head, winds up in the middle of a field, and then really quickly realizes that he is back in 1985. Almost immediately, his teenage shithead dad tries to beat him up because that's the kind of guy he is. And he runs off to that favorite teacher who actually just started teaching at this academy and then has to convince her that he is from the future and needs help getting back. While he's there, not only does he meet the teenage versions of his parents, but he also meets the guy that everyone talks about who died on prom night. And he's thinking, I need to save this guy because I don't want his life cut short. I actually listened to this book all in one sitting. I didn't pause it a single time. I listened to it all in one go because I was just so enthralled and I wanted to know what was going to happen. I also really enjoyed that our main character was free to be his very sarcastic, flamboyant self and just explore things about fashion and be very passionate about what he's passionate about, and that was just unabashed, and I loved that about this character because we don't always get to see that. We often get to see the person that's like, you know, a little bit more shy and reserved because what if people are going to judge me for the way that I am? And it's just like, no, be who you are. And I feel like if people are going to have problems with this book, it's going to be with the main character because they're going to think he is too flamboyant or too whatever when he is just being himself. I absolutely love this one. This one was such a delightful surprise for me, and I highly recommend listening to it because the narrator did a fantastic job. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't want to leave a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Also, if you participated in this round, please let me know the favorite thing that you read down below. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!